The room buzzed with disbelief as Lily approached the car. The engineers whispered, smirking, thinking she would embarrass herself. She could feel every eye on her, the investors, the reporters, and the CEO himself. But she didn't care. Her father had taught her everything she knew about engines before he passed, and she'd fixed harder things than this. She ran her hand along the chrome hood, feeling its warmth under the studio lights. "This car wants to run," she murmured. "You just have to give it the right breath." She crouched beside the open hood, her eyes sharp, scanning the complex network of cables and valves. The men had used all the right parts, but something about the timing assembly felt off. Her fingers moved with precision, tracing every wire and joint until she found it, a misaligned sensor connection that caused the intake to overcompensate. "Here's your problem," she whispered, grabbing a wrench. One of the senior engineers laughed. "She's guessing," he muttered. Alexander shot him a warning glance but said nothing, curious to see how far she'd go. Lily ignored the comments. Her father's words echoed in her mind. Engines are like people. They don't lie. They just stop talking when they're hurt. She adjusted the calibration carefully, then tightened the fuel line, feeling the resistance ease. Every motion was confident, practiced. It wasn't magic, it was intuition, born from years of fixing broken machines in her family's small-town garage. The crowd watched in silence now, the laughter fading. Even the CEO leaned forward, intrigued by her focus. As she tightened the last bolt, sweat trickled down her temple. She stood up, wiping her hands on her jumpsuit, and looked toward the lead engineer. "Try it now," she said quietly. The man hesitated, glancing at Alexander for approval. The CEO gave a slight nod. The key turned. For a moment, there was only stillness, and then the car roared to life, deep and powerful, the sound filling the entire lab. Everyone froze. The same machine that had refused to even cough now purred perfectly under her touch. The investors began clapping. The CEO's stern expression softened as he stepped forward. "What did you do?" he asked, almost amused. Lily smiled faintly. "Nothing you couldn't have done," she said. "I just listened." Her humility hit him harder than her skill. The engineers stood in silence, embarrassed but secretly impressed. One of them whispered, "She really did it." Alexander crossed his arms, studying her face, that spark of confidence, the kind only born from struggle and passion. When the crowd finally left, Alexander asked her to stay. "Where did you learn that?" he asked. "My dad," she said softly. "He fixed tractors, not supercars, but engines all speak the same language." The CEO smiled faintly, something rare for him. "You know your name, Lily Harper. It sounds familiar." Her expression changed slightly. "You fired my father 10 years ago. He worked at Coal Motors before Titan bought it out." Alexander's face fell. The past he'd forgotten had come back, standing before him in the form of a determined young woman. That night, Lily sat alone in the lab after everyone left, staring at the car she had brought to life. For the first time, she allowed herself to breathe. All those years fixing old trucks, saving money for trade school, being laughed at for being just a mechanic's kid. It all led to this moment. But she also knew this was only the beginning. The company would either take her seriously or push her aside, and she wasn't going back to being invisible again. The next morning, the news broke. Teenage mechanic Outsmarts billion-dollar auto team. Her photo was everywhere, standing by the running supercar, eyes determined, grease on her cheek. Social media exploded with praise. Mechanics, engineers, and dreamers from small towns across the country celebrated her courage. But not everyone was happy. Some at Titan Motors felt threatened. "She embarrassed us," one executive hissed. "She made us look like fools." Alexander overheard and said coldly, "No, she reminded us what passion looks like." Days later, Lily was summoned to the executive floor, the kind of place she'd only seen in movies. The receptionist looked confused, seeing her in a jumpsuit. When she entered Alexander's office, he stood by the window overlooking Los Angeles. "Do you know what you've done?" he asked. She hesitated. "I fixed an engine, sir." He turned, smiling slightly. "You fixed more than that. You woke up an entire company." He handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was a full scholarship, engineering school, all expenses paid, sponsored by Titan Motors. Lily stared at the letter, tears welling in her eyes. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because I've seen engineers with degrees make mistakes," he said. "But I've rarely seen someone who listens to machines like they're alive. That's not something I can buy. It's something I can believe in." She didn't know what to say. For once, the man who had fired her father was giving his daughter the chance of a lifetime. Fate had come full circle in the quietest, most poetic way possible. Months later, Lily stood on a grand stage, unveiling Titan Motors' next prototype, one she had personally helped design. Reporters crowded around her as she explained the new hybrid engine's design philosophy. She spoke with grace, passion, and knowledge that silenced even the toughest critics. "We built this engine not just with data," she said, "but with heart." The crowd erupted in applause. Alexander watched from the front row, proud and humbled. He knew he wasn't witnessing the rise of an engineer, but the birth of a legend. Years down the line, when people spoke of innovation and courage, they spoke of Lily Harper, the girl who had the courage to challenge giants and the skill to prove them wrong. She became a symbol for every young dreamer told they weren't enough, every small-town mechanic who dared to believe they could change the world. And when asked how she did it, she always smiled and said, "Engines are like people. You just have to listen when no one else does." And so, in a billion-dollar world of polished suits and perfect formulas, an 18-year-old mechanic girl reminded everyone that real genius isn't about status. It's about soul. The same soul that could hear the quiet hum of an engine and turn it into a symphony of power and purpose. That day she didn't just fix a car. She fixed the way the world saw people like her, and it would never be the same again. The sound of the engine filled the room like thunder rolling across a canyon. The vibrations seemed to rattle the walls, but what shook everyone more was the realization of who had done it. Lily stood there, small but unshaken, with grease on her cheek and confidence in her eyes. The men who had mocked her minutes ago now looked speechless. One of them removed his glasses in disbelief. Another whispered, "That's impossible." But Alexander Vance, the CEO, didn't say a word. He just stared, a faint trace of respect growing in his usually cold eyes. When the engine finally quieted, Lily stepped back, her hands trembling slightly. She couldn't believe what she'd done either. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from the electricity of accomplishment. "I told you," she said softly. "It just needed to breathe." The lead technician, once dismissive, now looked at her like she was some kind of miracle worker. Alexander finally approached her. "Who taught you that?" he asked quietly. "My father," Lily replied. "He said machines talk. Most people just don't listen long enough to hear them." Alexander gave a rare smile, almost hidden. "Your father must be proud," he said. But Lily's expression dimmed. "He passed away 2 years ago," she whispered. "He always dreamed I'd work somewhere like this, though." The room fell silent again, not from tension, but from quiet respect. Alexander nodded slowly, glancing back at the still-running engine. "Then it seems his dream finally came true through you," he said. "You've done something no one else here could do, Miss Harper." By the next morning, the story had exploded across every media outlet. "Teenage mechanic outsmarts billion-dollar engineers," the headlines read. Videos of her standing beside the roaring prototype flooded social media. Hashtags trended worldwide. In a single night, Lily had gone from an unknown intern to a national sensation. But while reporters were chasing her for interviews, she stayed humble, still arriving early to the workshop, still wearing the same old jumpsuit that smelled faintly of oil and dust. The senior engineers didn't know how to treat her anymore. Some avoided her out of embarrassment. Others quietly asked for her help, pretending it was a collaboration. Lily didn't gloat. She just smiled and shared what she knew. Alexander, meanwhile, couldn't shake the image of her calm determination. He'd built his empire on numbers, algorithms, and data. Yet here was an 18-year-old who had reminded him that intuition, something unteachable, was just as powerful as science. Later that week, Alexander called her into his office, a vast glass-walled space overlooking the city skyline. Lily stood nervously clutching her cap. "You've been making headlines," he said, gesturing to the tablet on his desk. "You've embarrassed some of my best engineers and inspired half the world at the same time." She shifted awkwardly. "I didn't mean to embarrass anyone, sir." He chuckled softly. "I know you didn't. That's exactly why it worked. You acted out of heart, not ego." He reached into a drawer and handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was a scholarship, full tuition for any engineering program she chose, funded entirely by Titan Motors. "You've got something rare," Alexander said. "Talent without arrogance. That's worth investing in." Tears filled Lily's eyes. "I don't know what to say," he smiled faintly. "Say you'll take it and come back when you graduate. We'll need you." For the first time, she realized that the man she once feared wasn't a villain. He was simply someone who'd forgotten what passion looked like until she reminded him. Months passed. Lily's life changed forever. She began studying advanced automotive design, quickly becoming a top student. Professors praised her innovation and simplicity. Whenever she felt overwhelmed, she'd remember that day in the lab, the way the car had come alive under her hands. Every new challenge reminded her that listening, not rushing, was her secret strength. Sometimes she'd visit her father's grave after exams, leaving a small wrench beside the stone and whispering, "We did it, Dad." 2 years later, Titan Motors prepared to unveil a new electric hybrid engine, faster, cleaner, and more efficient than anything before. And guess who was called back to help fine-tune the design? Lily Harper, now 20 and known in the industry as the Whisperer. The media buzzed with anticipation. Can the young prodigy who once saved Titan Motors do it again? On the day of the unveiling, she stood beside Alexander on stage, wearing a crisp white uniform instead of her old jumpsuit. Cameras flashed. The moment felt surreal. When the countdown began, she pressed the ignition button herself. The new engine purred flawlessly, smooth and powerful. The crowd erupted in applause, cheering her name. Alexander stepped to the microphone. 2 years ago, she taught us all a lesson, that innovation isn't about status or experience, but about courage. Lily smiled shyly as he continued. Today, she stands here not as a mechanic's daughter, but as the future of Titan Motors. Reporters called it poetic. The same CEO, once doubting her, now celebrating her brilliance. After the ceremony, Alexander approached her privately. "Do you know why I really believed in you?" he asked. She shook her head. "Because I used to be you," he said quietly. "I started in a garage too, hungry, underestimated, desperate to prove myself. Somewhere along the way I lost that spark. You helped me find it again?" Lily's throat tightened. "Thank you, sir," she said. "But all I did was fix an engine," he smiled. "No, Lily, you fixed a company's heart." Years later, Titan Motors became one of the leading innovators in sustainable automotive design, and Lily Harper became its youngest chief engineer. People came from all over the world to learn from her, not just her techniques, but her humility. She never forgot her roots or the small garage where it all began. Every year, she sponsored scholarships for young mechanics, especially girls who wanted to study engineering. When journalists asked her what kept her grounded, she always gave the same answer. Engines don't care who you are. They only care if you listen. And so, the legend of Lily Harper spread far beyond the walls of any lab. She wasn't just the girl who outsmarted a billion-dollar team. She was the girl who proved that genius doesn't always wear a suit. Her story was told in classrooms, documentaries, and graduation speeches across the country. And somewhere, in a quiet workshop where it all began, a framed photo of her father still hung above the workbench, smiling, proud, and forever part of the engine that started it all.